In this episode, I discuss 5 challenges that Pilates instructors commonly have throughout their careers, and I give you advice on how you can overcome them to become a better and happier Pilates instructor. And if you enjoy this content, you would love the VIP membership. We can go ahead and work together with a 2-week free trial of the VIP membership. You get workshops, research reviews, tons of classes, and personalized mentorship from me. This is a one-of-a-kind mentorship for Pilates instructors. You can get 2 weeks 100% for free with the link in the show notes. But without further ado, let's get on to this episode. All right, let's go ahead and get stuck into this episode. This episode was inspired by social media interactions in which I created a story on my account in which I just asked Pilates instructors what are the most common challenges that they experience throughout their day to day. And I got well over 50 responses, which was awesome. I gave them all video responses to go ahead and help support them. And then I also saw common themes, so I thought this would be like an awesome Pilates or podcast episode because this is going to be relatable stuff. So I summarized, although I couldn't capture it all, I summarized the feedback into 5 common themes. The first one is imposter syndrome. The second one is understanding anatomy. The third one is navigating egos on and off of social media, meaning other instructors. And then the fourth one is boundaries, right? And that can go so many ways. And then the last one is programming. So I can imagine, regardless if you are a new instructor or a seasoned Pilates instructor, that you can relate to these challenges that we have as instructors, and especially if you are like a teacher trainer, right? These are things that your trainees are absolutely going to experience. And so our time together can be valuable for you to help guide them even better. So that's my case for like, I would suggest you listen. Okay. I hope that I have something good to say. So the first one is imposter syndrome. For now, I don't have like a firm definition. I don't have like an academic definition of imposter syndrome. But if I were to explain it using authentic terms, for me, it would be that you feel like a fraud, right? You feel fraudulent when you show up to the Pilates studio. If you were to show up to a workshop and say you were an instructor, right, you would feel inferior. In front of your clients, you feel insecure and things of that nature. So you feel less than, and that's usually relative to other individuals in the industry. Now, although I don't have like a cure for imposter syndrome, I certainly have experience with it within myself. As a teacher trainer for Breathe Education for, I want to say it was like 3 years, and then Club Pilates before then. And now I mentor, a part of the VIP membership that I have now is mentorship. I mentor over 300 Pilates instructors. I helped a lot of individuals navigate this. But at the end of the day, this is an inside job. And it's on you, and I hope to plant some seeds. Now, for new instructors, let's say like less than a year, don't get attached to the number, but it's like, this is a new experience as a Pilates instructor. It's like, how do I say it? Like the average instructor goes through some imposter syndrome. Well, like you don't have to feel like a fraud, but a lot of times we will walk in and be like, oh, I don't know all the answers, right? Or I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know why this works, right? You don't know the answers to the questions of your clients. You don't know why their knee hurts. And there's all these things that can provoke insecurities. And like, of course that's going to happen, right? You're new at this, right? I want to put in like the kindest words possible. And I'm really just speaking to my younger self who wanted to be like perfect out of the gate. It's like, of course you're not that good. Like you just started. Like how could you possibly expect to be an expert at anything? It doesn't have to be Pilates. It could be playing piano. Like how can you expect to be like phenomenal right out of the gate. Now, you might be phenomenal in other ways, right? Maybe it's not the anatomy, but maybe you're phenomenal in terms of like your people skills, right? And your communication, all kinds of things. But the imposter syndrome, I just want to like normalize it. Like it happens. Okay. It absolutely happens. And it happened with me. And in my experience, my imposter syndrome was a result of me knowing that I had knowledge and skills gaps that were not addressed. Right. So a client would come in with low back pain, and then I would hope that exercises would make them feel better. Right. And then if they didn't feel better, I did something wrong. Like that was that. I'm not saying that's right, but like that was my experience. And so I felt like an imposter if someone walked out and they had some pain, or I didn't like cure their pain with like a Pilates session, because I saw my other Pilates instructors do it. And in Pilates school, they said that, it like Pilates cures all ailments. Right. And so with that, it's absolutely normal, but it's also an indicator to be like, oh, I have knowledge and skill gaps, right? And that's not a knock on anyone, right? Like this is trying to facilitate a growth mindset of like, whoa, there's so much to learn, right? Like going to Pilates school is just like the credentials, so now you can get a job. It doesn't mean that you really know movement, right? And I certainly did it. Okay, I'm 15 years in. I'm still learning the anatomy and the biomechanics and the Pilates and interactions and pain science and motor learning and strength training, right? It's a journey. But the best thing you can do to overcome an imposter syndrome is to show up, right? Show up. And every day that you show up, you can learn. Your clients are your teachers. They are teaching you how to teach Pilates. And sometimes they're teaching us where our skill gaps are, right? They're teaching us that we don't understand the joint mechanics of the knee, because we thought the knee was a hinge joint, where it's like, well, actually the knee has two joints. One's a modified hinge joint, and the other one's the patellofemoral joint, right? It's so there's so much more to learn, and that's the awesome part about being a Pilates instructor. And so the Pilates instructors that how would you say like no longer experience imposter syndrome or know how to be in the room with it and be cool are the ones that just showed up enough. Okay. So what's my cure for imposter syndrome? Show up to work tomorrow and get better, right? Every day, just get better. And if you do that for long enough, you're going to be freaking awesome. And you're going to mentor other instructors on how to manage their imposter syndrome. Okay. Or their feeling of being fraudulent, right? I don't even feel good of saying imposter syndrome. It's not a diagnosis. Okay. It's just a feeling, and we put that label on it. So that feeling of being fraudulent, right? So here's my case for like education. When you like know enough history of Pilates, you know the original repertoire, right? When people come at you and they like question where you went to school, or like if you know Pilates enough and you know the answers to their questions, and then whatever your value system is, you don't feel like a fraud, right? You just disagree with someone. When a client comes in and they want you to cure their low back pain, and they're upset that their chronic low back pain wasn't fixed, right? Because you didn't work the right muscles for them. It wasn't fixed in the first session. You know that their expectations are they're not reasonable if you understand pain science and exposure of low back pain research. But that takes time, right? If a client is asking you a question about the joint mechanics, otherwise known as arthrokinematics, of the knee joint, right, or the muscles of the knee, right, what muscles can I strengthen to strengthen my knee? If you know that anatomy, right, you don't feel like an imposter. Like you just feel like a nerd. Right? Let's get nerdy, right? You can just like talk to them about it, right? And then you learn how to communicate better, because you might just tell them too much anatomy and now they're like, okay, thanks. All the things. So where am I going in this ramble? man, you just got to keep showing up. I can't tell you how many days I felt like an absolute fraud teaching Pilates. I didn't have a mentor. Okay. I went to Pilates school. I had 3 hours of Pilates school that was taught by my mother, right? Who's awesome, right? Shout out to mom. She taught me for 3 hours, and I signed up for Pilates school because I drove a forklift at midnight, and I like hated my life at the time. Right. And I needed a change. So then I go to Pilates school. I can't afford private lessons, right? I can afford one group class a week, and I was splurging. Okay. And then I go to become a Pilates instructor, and I work by myself, right? I felt like an absolute fraud. There was no mentor, right? I don't recommend it, by the way. I offer mentorship in the VIP membership. Okay. You get it. There's no additional fee. It's like 2-week free trial. Try it. So anyways, with that, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay. It's not your identity. It's an experience, right? And you get to control your reality. Okay. No one else gets to control that. You get to control your reality. What's the best way to overcome this? Keep showing up, keep learning, not acknowledge skill gaps, and sign up for courses, read the books, ask questions, get a mentor, things like that. Like take action to resolve any insecurities or skill gaps that we have. Okay. I would love to say we don't have skill gaps, but we all do. I certainly do. Right now, I'm learning how to become a physical therapist, right? I'm a beginner at that skill. Okay. I'm absolutely a beginner. I need to listen to the podcast. I take the courses. I read the books. I get mentors. Okay. I have skill gaps. We all do. So that is theme number 1. You see why we didn't go through all 50 messages? Could you imagine how long this episode would be? Oh my God. Okay. So understanding anatomy was number 2. This is a good one. Because we say we want to understand anatomy. What we actually want is to understand movement, right? Because some of the comments were like, I want to understand anatomy so then I know how to modify movement, right? Anatomy doesn't tell you how to modify movement. Anatomy is structure. It's static. It doesn't move. That's why you can study dead people, right? You can't study the biomechanics of a cadaver, right? Because cadavers, they don't move, right? They can only tell you structure. So yes, we want to know anatomy. Anatomy is important, but we need to crack that egg open. And what you actually want to learn is biomechanics, probably strength training too, because you probably want to modify an exercise to then get someone stronger for a skill, or you want to know pain science and then biomechanics, right? So someone's having pain, so you do symptom modification, and therefore you understand how to do that easily. But I am 100% okay for understanding anatomy. I just want to double click on, like, I think we actually want to understand movement, right? And anatomy doesn't move, but anatomy can inform your biomechanics. Because if you don't know what a deltoid is, I think that's a problem, right? But it doesn't mean you're bad. Don't go into your imposter syndrome. It's a skills gap, right? So it's like, oh, what do you do? Well, study, right? Like take the time, to take a course and things like that. That's why I'm making an anatomy course. It'll be, I'm full disclosure. I know I've talked about it, right? It's not coming out this week. It'll be here by the end of the year. This is June 2024. I am on a clinical rotation. I run a business, have a family. So time is short, and I don't want to, this is not going to just be like some course I threw together. It's going to be a masterpiece for Pilates instructors. So I'm on my last clinical rotation. I have to pass the licensing exam to be a licensed physical therapist, and anatomy course to come right after that. So it is coming. So if you want to understand anatomy, things like that, I recommend taking any courses that are currently available, purchasing books, just following like anatomy pages and things like that, and just like meeting on social media, having that exposure and things of that nature. And I will have the anatomy course available for you as well if you appreciate this podcast, the work I do at Evidence-Based Pilates, or any other work that we've done before. The anatomy course, but just one last thing about this, it's not just going to be anatomy, it's going to be anatomy and movement, right? So anatomy and biomechanics, so you can actually understand it. And then we're going to apply it to mat work. We're going to apply it to the Cadillac. We'll apply it to the reformer. We'll apply it to the Wonder Chair. This is going to be a masterpiece of a course. for Pilates instructors, and it's not going to be a course where you just take it once, because that's a mistake with anatomy. People buy a course, like a 6-week course on anatomy or something, and then it doesn't take 6 weeks to learn anatomy. It takes a lifetime, right? So you'll have lifetime access to this course. You'll have an option for a subscription, or you can just buy it for a lifetime. Anyways, it'll be live and online, meaning live as in we'll have live meetings, or you can just take it at your own pace. With that, anatomy course coming end of 2024, plug over. So the first two things we talked about, imposter syndrome, right? That's an inside job. How do you overcome it? Show up, recognize skill gaps, work on your skill gaps. Okay, take action. Understanding anatomy. You probably want to understand movement, but understanding anatomy is really helpful. Okay, absolutely. But you have to take it one step further. Okay, you got to understand movement. And then if we want to help people in pain, you actually have to understand pain science, because biomechanics and anatomy do not explain pain. Okay, when people do that, I would run. Anyways, so with that, what's the third one? Navigating egos in social media with other instructors. Shit. I'm gonna try not to get in trouble with this one. Meaning that I get like fired up with it. It pisses me off because there's so much like nuance that's argued over that is outside of the realm of clinical significance. Clinical significance meaning like it actually makes a difference in the Pilates studio. I have put on videos on social media where a Pilates instructor across the world, okay, I can't even get the words out. They criticize the alignment of my toes on the foot bar. I cannot make this shit up. My toes were wrong, and that's why I did it wrong. It's wild, right? It's absolutely wild. Okay. Navigating egos and social media and other instructors. Okay. You like, my best advice here is like, you don't have to everyone doesn't have to like you, because you don't like everyone anyways, and that's okay. Okay. The nice thing about social media is like you can just filter, right? You can block someone. Like I've had people where they literally only show up to criticize, right? It's never anything positive. Anytime I see like their comment, I'm just like this person again, right? It takes up my time. And then if I don't respond, I think that's weird, right? So there are times where I'm like, I'm just going to block this person. Like I would be so happy to never see them again. You know, that person who it's like you have like an obligatory coffee date with, but all they are is like depressing and they complain. And then you try to tell them your dreams and they shit on it. And it's just like, I don't like, this isn't helping me get to where I want to go. So that's my advice with social media, is that you can go ahead and just filter people out. And then what I can say is that you won't regret putting yourself out there if you're managing it, right? Because going on social media and interacting with other Pilates instructors is the best thing I've ever done in my career. Okay. I have individuals that I would have never met or even know existed if I didn't do that. You wouldn't be listening to me and having any experience that we've ever had. Evidence-based Pilates wouldn't exist if I didn't put myself out there on the internet. And there's someone out there that needs you, right? There's an instructor out there that needs your perspective, right? So I would highly encourage you to I just feel like my mom, where she's like, just fucking deal with it. That's who I was raised by. Shout out to mom, love you. So it's like, it's one of these things, like sometimes we just have to deal with that. And we know that there's going to be pushback and things of that nature. But one thing that I've always kept in mind when having discussions with other instructors that I may have discourse with on social media is like, it's not about winning them over. They're not interested, right? They're absolutely not interested. But there are like, for every one person that is like commenting, there's 100 that are reading that comment. And so it can be really useful for you to have like a skilled discussion, or maybe just share like for me, like a science-based approach. And then that person, that introvert who like has no interest in commenting, reads that and it's like, wow, there's science-based Pilates out there. Okay, you can make a huge difference. But navigating egos is really challenging. Now in person, that can be really challenging too. This is one where like I work well with others under certain conditions. It can be very challenging to work in a studio that has contrasting approaches. Now, there's all different ways of going about that. Um, one thing that I would recommend if you are in a position to do so is when you go to apply, right? If you're not like desperate to get your groceries and you have to get the job, like it's okay if you don't. Okay. When you go to apply at the studio, you can make it known of like, hey, like I have these values in the Pilates industry. Like for me, I'm an evidence-based instructor. I utilize research to inform my decisions, and that's something that I feel very strongly about. A studio that's a good fit is going to be like, that's awesome, and you'll start having a discussion about it, and you'll get the good vibes. Whereas there could be all different types of pushback to that. Like other instructors, they could be like, okay, well, we follow the principles, and like you can just see it like going down like some other rabbit hole. And with that can give you a lot of information. So if the way I would navigate egos is just try to be around people that you agree with or that are like-minded in terms of working at a studio. Now, that can also like another way to go about that is like let's say it's not possible, right? Well, then I would try to be as autonomous as possible. Like when I used to work at Club Pilates, I would have tons of disagreements with other instructors, with the corporate, right? Something about not having citations to support anything they would ever say, things of that nature. I would just, but I didn't have a problem teaching there because I was the only person there, right? So if you're noticing that like you're having a hard time navigating egos in the studio, well, work at places where they only want like one instructor there at a time. And like that's one way to do it. Or can you work at a place where you can be a contractor and you can just bring in your own clientele, so you don't have to share clients with other people? Now, this isn't necessarily easy because now you have to take ownership of your clientele, right? Because it gets really tricky when you are navigating other egos or approaches of Pilates instructors and you're sharing a client with them, right? So like one person is trying to like realign their fascia, right, with like a foam roller or something, and then like that's the answers to all of their pain and troubles in the world, and then you're like trying to promote like functional movement or something like that. Whatever you're promoting, that can be really challenging. So you can't control other people, but what you can do is try and navigate your environment. How do we do that on social media? I would just, if people give you bad vibes, I would just block them. Like you won't regret it. You won't miss them. Be like, I missed that comment that used to piss me off, or and things of that nature. And then you can mold social media to a place that is really comforting for you, and that you can feel connected to like-minded individuals. And then, another social media tip: if you do that, by the way, one piece of advice is to be a creator of social media and not a consumer. Right? So if consuming social media just makes you mad, stop consuming it. Just create it and then close it down and respond to people that are commenting on your stuff. You actually don't have to comment on other people's stuff, right? You can have a superpower and just be a creator. Now, in the studio, just to summarize, right, I recommend, one, like being very upfront in interviews about your values and things of that nature, and that'll help you just be a strong asset to the right place because they're going to love you. And then you can just like, it's a good filter because it's like, oh, this place wasn't going to work out. I would rather know that right away than 6 months down the road when I'm upset. And then also you can work at places that don't need a lot of Pilates instructors there at the same time, right? If you have a hard time with that and things of that nature, or find Pilates instructors that are like, but that's way easier said than done. I hope that one was okay. That one's kind of hard to talk about. Now, the next two are boundaries and programming. Okay, so boundaries. Oh man, that could be its own episode. But I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna go two different places with this. One, time off, and then two, cancellation policies. Yes, you should have one. So I highly recommend non-negotiable time off. Okay, life is short. Life is short, and at the end of your life, okay, when you're looking back at it, I feel safe in saying that you won't regret saying, damn it, I prioritized things that were valuable to me, right? You won't say, I should have taken another session. You know what I mean? Like when you look at big picture, what's really important to you? Okay? I highly recommend having non-negotiable time off. It might be your daughter's soccer game, right? It might be like weekends. It might be Monday mornings, right? That was my thing. It was weekends and Monday mornings. Okay. For me, like there were definitely times where I showed up on a weekend, I showed up on a Monday morning. Okay. I wasn't like bougie right away. But as you teach for long enough, you can start to prioritize things, right? Because you have more leverage. So I totally get it. If you're just like, no, I got certified last month, so I'm teaching like Mondays at 6 a.m. and then I come back at 5 p.m. and then I take a Tuesday. Like you have this really weird schedule because you're trying to get 20 hours. I totally get it. I remember doing like 2 sessions in a day because I was just like desperate for clients. It was like 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. It was like I was still poor, like I broke. Well, not poor, broke. I was broke, and I was exhausted because I worked 2 hours. Anyways, I get it, right? But as time goes on and you generate enough leverage, right? You can prioritize like non-negotiable time offs. For me, it was Monday mornings and it was weekends. Okay. So for the weekends, it was I will not have any standing appointments, right? It wasn't I won't take one session ever, right? Because I did work at studios. Sometimes they needed subs and stuff like that. And sometimes I didn't have plans on weekends. I didn't want a standing session on a weekend because like I was in my 20s. I was like, I don't know when I'm going out to West Hollywood. Uh, and I'm not going to be okay in the morning. That just keeping it real. I was like, I was 22 teaching Pilates. Okay? I was having fun. So for me, it was that. And then also Monday mornings because like it's Monday morning. Okay. So for me, I never woke up on a Monday morning at home with with my cup of coffee and my eggs and been so disappointed. Like I wish I would have taken a session. Right. No, I was enjoying myself. Right. And then I would go in around noon. Right. And I would just let that be like a half day. Okay. But that was, I had time to do that. So whatever it means like to you, right? You might have this thing on Tuesdays. Like I used to go to an event Tuesday nights in Malibu. And so for me, it was like, I need to be off by 5 on Tuesdays. Okay. Just having these hard cutoffs, you will not regret prioritizing things that are important to you. And the money works out. Okay. It will work out always. Okay. But if you take the sessions when you shouldn't have, you are more likely to have frustration with your schedule. Okay. Now, I know we can't overhaul a schedule right away, but you can start with one thing. Maybe it's like that Monday morning or Tuesday afternoon, whatever it is. Okay, let it be like you need to have some non-negotiable time offs. Okay, and that can also be vacations, right? And I remember those were really hard because when I was like first teaching, right, there was no vacation time. I don't know if that exists now, but like there was no vacation time, didn't exist. So like taking a week off meant I spent money for the week on like the vacation, wherever that was. And then I also lost a whole week's of income. Right. So it was like, got very expensive. Okay? So I totally get it. Right. But if you can pull it off, like put it on your calendar, it's non-negotiable. Like you're taking the time off. Because if you just teach 52 weeks a year, like you're more likely to get burned out. Okay. You do you, but I hope that this is helpful. Non-negotiable time off, whatever that means to you, you will not regret it. Now, the next one within boundaries is cancellation policies. Okay. Here's the best advice ever. Have one and be firm with it. Okay. So if you don't have a cancellation policy, you will experience cancellations. So if like you train your clients, Okay, you train your clients how to do footwork, but you also train your clients how to behave in your business. Okay, because you having a cancellation policy is a subset within your business. So, how are you training your clients? Now, you don't have to be a jerk, right? And be like, no cancellations ever. I don't care that that someone stole your car, Sharon, right? You need to pay me. You don't, I mean, if someone like steals their car, like maybe be compassionate, right? And things like that. Something that I used to do was I would give people like a quarterly cancellation because I had a private clientele, right? So I was fortunate enough where I built myself up in the community, and I had private clients, right? I did only private clients for quite a while. Then I added groups. So for the private clients, because that was my business, I used to not like at first I didn't have a cancellation policy because I had this thing called imposter syndrome, and I just like I was and I was also scared and all kinds of things, and um so I just kind of let them get away with it, and guess what? They canceled more often. Okay. Absolutely. Okay. That's what happens because I taught them there were no consequences to canceling. Then, okay, came along a time where I had a cancellation policy and I was just like totally firm with it, and it pissed people off, right? So it's like how do we protect our business while also not pissing people off too often? Some people will just be mad at anything, right? But like whatever. s- with this, what I recommend, or something that worked for me, was to let people have like every 4 months, it could be, or what, every 3 months would be quarterly. Every 3 months, they got one freebie for a cancellation, as long as, but not a no show. A no show was like you will pay for that, right? You will pay for that. Yeah. Anyways, so I would charge for that. But if you notify me and stuff like that, it's within the 24 hours or 12 hours, whatever the hours is for you. Okay. Like once a quarter, it's okay because it allows them to be human, right? There's like flexibility within that. Now it doesn't have to be once a quarter for you. It could be like once a year or half of a year, stuff like that. But life happens. And I can tell you, like, if I was a customer and then I like things just kind of happen and I could never get out of my session, I would end up leaving, but that's me. So anyways, that's where I kind of find that happy median. You absolutely need to have a cancellation policy. There's a reason why businesses have cancellation policies. Okay. When you think of like big box businesses and stuff like that, they're good at business. Watch what they do. Okay. Watch what they do and then just model your business around it. So that's just good business advice, right? Like people that are doing like what you do, but do it better, they've been doing it longer. What do they do? Right? Just model what they do. Don't copy it, but model it. So that's what I would recommend. Have a cancellation policy. Be flexible, so then the consumer like it's fair to the consumer, but then it also puts boundaries, reasonable boundaries and things of that nature. And also, like you need to be very upfront with that right away, right? And they sign it and everything. Like there's no um, there's no surprises. Okay, people don't like being nickel and dimed. People don't like surprises in that way. Now, that was boundaries. Okay. Non negotiable time off, have a cancellation policy. Now, programming. Okay. This is the good one. This is why I created the Mastering Mat and Reformer Programming Workshop, where I created a programming system to help you program classes in less than 5 minutes. Because the first, there's subsets with this. There's creating them, and then there's keeping people interested. So creating programs. Uh, Now, this is one of these things, like, I don't think you really need to have a lot of programs. Because a lot of times when we're like, oh, we need to keep things interesting, a lot of times it's like we are the ones who are bored. Okay. So there's a happy median, right? So if you just do the same thing, like you only teach the original repertoire, um, like people are more likely to get bored. Now, don't cancel me with it being like, the repertoire is not boring. It's not boring, but doing the same of anything is boring, right? After a while, right? So it's nice to mix things up. But I love the original repertoire. Don't cancel me. Okay, I did 1 to 18 on the reformer today. I don't know why. After 18, I'm just like I freestyle. I pick up something happy, I do other stuff. But that's just me, right? So if you just do the same thing every week, it does get boring. I've been bored in like Barry's bootcamp classes where I can predict the next exercise, right? It was irritating. It was like, can you put in some effort and like make another one? So there is that. But if you have too much creativity, then it's like it's one, confusing for the client, because a lot of times it's like they're unfamiliar with the exercise. So now you're like setting up and things like that. That gets weird. And then it's also hard for them to judge if they're getting better, because they haven't done this exercise before, or they've only done it like twice, right? Whereas if you did, let's say if you did like lunges and scooters, right? And you did that like every class, but like some bits of the class were different. During that lunge and that scooter, like you can assess if you're getting stronger, because you used to do a half spring and now you're doing a full spring, or you used to do a full spring and now you're doing a spring and a half, or maybe it was like an 8 out of 10 challenge for you before, and now it's only a 6 out of 10 challenge, right? Which is why I would add a spring. But anyways, so it's really helpful to have repetition, right? But too much repetition gets boring, and that threshold of boredom is different for everyone. Okay. But so where I would go with this is, if your clients can predict the next exercise constantly in your class, maybe it's too repetitive, right? Whereas if your clients are confused, maybe, okay, they can be confused for a lot of reasons, but maybe we can have less creativity. Why do I talk about creativity? Well, that's usually we usually put pressure on ourselves to always have to generate these programs. So one way to go about this without getting the system that I created was, I would, and this is like the framework of the system, right? But anyways, so I would just have different clusters of exercises or combinations of exercises. In the VIP membership, I call them combos. And I would organize them by body position, right? And you can really just have like 4 or 5 in different body positions, and then just mix those up. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel the whole time. Like I have never, okay, or no, once. I did it once and then I didn't use it. I've never sat down with a notebook and written out a program. That sounds like, to me, mind numbing. Okay. Like, the system I created is a copy and paste system. Like, that's why you can get it done in way less than 5 minutes per program. Okay. So like writing down, like you'll drive yourself crazy. Or if you're like, oh my God, I do that. Like, it's not wrong. For me, I couldn't handle that because you don't get paid to program, right? So if you spend 5 hours, like if you spend 5 hours a week programming and writing stuff down, okay, you have to add that to the hours that you worked. Like, if you worked 20 hours for $50 an hour, your $50 an hour just went down, because now you have to divide the money you made over 25 hours, not 20. Okay. You don't get paid to program. You need to get your programming down. So how do you do that? You program less, right? I would do very similar programs all the time. Okay. And you can just change like 1 or 2 combos, okay, in a program, and it's completely different. You could do the same exercises in a different order. It's totally different. You can do the same program, but now it's on a half spring. It's totally different. You could do the same program, but 3 to 4 exercises are actually going to be on really heavy springs. Okay, I do it all the time. Okay. So how can you reduce the amount of creativity in your programming? I think that's a good starting place in terms of programs. Okay. If you are constantly writing down, like you're starting from scratch on every program, there is a better way. Okay. Learn combos in different body positions. And then what you can do, instead of writing down every exercise, if you just know different combos, right? You can just write down like 7 body positions, and there's your program. For example, I'll write a program for you right now. Okay, so we're going to start on the side of the reformer, right? We're going to do some single thigh stretch and stuff. Then I'm going to bring the class on top of the reformer, right? Maybe some long stretchy stuff. And then we're going to go to the other side of the reformer for single thigh stretch. So now we're on the floor. We're going to grab the strap, and we're just going to do, I don't know, like a 5 to 10 minute combo. Okay, I have a bunch of those in my head. Then we're going to go back and do a bunch of scooters and lunges, because we're still next to the reformer. Okay, so now we can go ahead and lie down on our back on the reformer. Do you see how this is a program, right? I can keep talking you through it, but it's like, if you just think about like how it flows, think in body position. So you go side of the reformer on top of the reformer, side of the reformer for 2 different combos. Then then it's like, where's the next logical place to go? On the reformer. Go lay down. Fine. Then go do the other side. Okay. Then you're standing on the floor. It's a great time to grab the box. Boom, you're done. Okay. But it's a thing of like, oh, when I have the box, what do I do? That's why you need to know some combos. Okay, you just need a handful of combos in each body position. Okay, if you think in body positions, you only have to you can just reorganize like the 8 or so body positions that you have on a reformer. You're facing the side. You can be kneeling, standing, sitting. Right? Maybe there's more than 8, whatever. Okay, that's just going to help simplify it. Okay. I'm gonna get off my ramble with that, but that programming workshop's really good. Anyways, so the next bit of this is like keeping it interesting. Okay, this is part of the imposter syndrome, right? We think like it's not interesting, so people don't like it. They don't like me. They're not coming back, right? It's like I'm fraudulent or there's insecurities. A lot of like the first person to get bored is you. Okay, so what can you do to keep yourself interested? Right? So, how can you teach this exercise better, right? How can you work on your cueing? How, like, what are the, like, and if it's a lunge, right? Like, how can you cue them to get the most out of this exercise? Okay. What about the joints, right? Like what's happening in the body during this lunge? And if you want to bias the quadriceps, what would you do? If you wanted to bias the glutes, what would you do? In a lunge, if you bias the quadriceps, you're going to want it to be, you're going to want to keep the trunk upright. Okay. If you want to bias the glutes, you bring the chest forward. So you do a hip hinge. It puts your gluteus maximus on length. So a lot of this has to do with like maybe you just deepening your knowledge of the exercises and really getting interested in the art of teaching. Okay. And then also celebrating the victories with your clients and really communicating with them. It's like trying to pull out information of like, did you enjoy class? Right. Because if they come, okay, I can't tell you how many times I taught a class and I was like, man, I think I taught this last week. Right. Because I'm like freestyling and whatnot. And I just think the class is bored. Right. I'm not because I'm bored. And then I could not tell you how many times I'm like eating my power bar by the stereo, like trying to hide from people. And then, a client comes up and they're like, oh my God, that was the best class ever. Thank you so much. And then they're like off to go to Starbucks and enjoy their day. So in my head, I'm like, we just did the same lunges, right? So just because it's the same exercises doesn't mean it's the same experience, right? And I think that's the goal here, right? Like how can you give your clients a new experience? It doesn't have to be a new program. Okay. It could be using their name this week. It could be remembering what they did last week and then celebrating how it looks even better this week, or giving them personalized attention cues, adding a spring. There's so many things that you can do within the same program. I'm not saying teach the same program every week, but if you did, there are so many ways that that your clients can have a new experience. That is what keeps them interested, having a new experience. Yes, a new exercise is a new experience, but so is a new spring. So is when the client is like, this person never uses my name. Like, do they even know my name? And then you go up there and you use their name. That's a new experience. Okay. So how can you give your clients a new or even better experience this week, regardless if it's with the program or not? So with programming, my approach here is like, let's take the pressure off of ourselves. Okay. Now, if you're teaching the same programs, your class roster went from 10 and then it went down to like 4 or 3, then yeah, maybe like mixing it up could be a thing. But a lot of times it's just an insecurity within ourselves that we feel they're bored. We're actually the ones that are bored. In that we can reframe this to saying, how can I give my clients the best experience possible, and recognizing that each day at Pilates is a new experience. Okay, so having the right amount of repetition can actually be really useful with just a splash of creativity along the way. And one way that I recommend doing that is to have combinations of exercises that you're really familiar with based on body positions. Okay. But with that, we had 5 challenges that we were talking about today that Pilates instructors commonly have. It was imposter syndrome, understanding anatomy, navigating egos within and outside of the Pilates studio, boundaries, as well as programming. I hope that some of this rang true for you, that it helped provide insight for you and allowed you to become a more fulfilled Pilates instructor. It was awesome to hang out with you, and I'll see you in the next episode.